Magic the Gathering is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, and it's no surprise given that it's one of the deepest and most dynamic games ever conceived. However, they can make it a little bit daunting for newer players, but fear not. My name is Jim Davis. I'm a full-time content creator and 15-year professional Magic veteran, and I'm here to show you how to build your first deck on MTG Arena. Plus, don't tell anyone, but if you stick around, I'll be able to get some free cards too. So, you've got your MTG Arena account, you've played through the color challenges, and you find yourself here saying, I have with these pre-con decks, I want to build my own deck. Congratulations, you're taking your first step into one of the most exciting parts of Magic the Gathering, where you get to pick the game pieces that you like and put them together any way you want. There's just one problem. Where do you begin? Lucky for you, I'm here today with my assistant. I'm sorry, what was that? My partner, Professor Jim, to help show you all the deck building basics you need to have you building like a pro. Then, we're gonna get some new cards and start building our first deck. Ready there, Professor? I absolutely am, Jim. Fantastic. So, let's take a look at our key concepts. Today, I'll be talking about having a plan, the Manacurve, and building your deck by the numbers, which are all cornerstones to understanding deck building in Magic. Our first and perhaps most important deck building lesson is to have a plan. For more on that, let's send you over to the classroom with the professor. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. When you start building your deck, you're going to want to have a decent idea of what you want your deck to do, a mission statement, if you will. This mission statement will guide you through how you want to build your deck, as you will always have a goal in mind. And this goal doesn't need to be some complicated combination of cards. It can be as simple as something like, I want to deal early damage with my creatures, then finish them off with direct damage spells, or I want to make a lot of mana as fast as possible and cast large game-ending threats early. This way, when you're deciding what cards you want to add, you can always check them against your mission statement to see if they make sense. For example, you may want to play a card like Lightning Strike instead of a card like a Braid, because while they can both kill creatures and have the same mana cost, only one can damage a player directly. What makes Magic a beautiful game is how decks become more than the sum of their parts. They work together to achieve a goal, and having a plan for your deck is a major part of that. Really great stuff, Professor. Having a plan is great, but executing on that plan isn't always easy. Let's talk a little more about the actual nuts and bolts of building a deck as we get to one of the most important concepts in all of deck building, the mana curve. Now, mana, of course, is the defining characteristic of Magic the Gathering as a game. The mana and land-based resource system dictates the pace of play, and as such, will also be dictating how you build your deck. This leads us to the mana curve. Your mana curve, in its simplest terms, is the cards in your deck organized by mana cost. This creates a graph of all your cards from cheapest to most expensive, showing you what you can expect to play on each turn of the game. Expensive and powerful cards like Titan of Industry or Hullbreaker Horror are powerful game winners, but if your deck only contains cards that cost 7 mana, you give your opponent free reign of the early game, and you probably won't survive to cast your expensive spells. However, the converse is that if you play all 1 mana cards, you'll come out of the gates very quickly, but your lower powered cards will struggle in the mid and late game. Think of it like playing chess but only having pawns. As such, having a good mana curve that matches the goals of your deck is vital. A good mana curve often resembles a bell curve, although naturally skewed towards the lower end. Cards that cost 2 and 3 mana are perhaps the most important for 2 reasons. One is that being able to play things on these important early turns is vital to getting yourself set up, and 2 is that you can always play 2 cheaper spells in a turn instead of 1 expensive spell as the game progresses. This gives you more options and flexibility in the mid-game. Furthermore, if you examine the hypergeometric distribution of... Professor, that's enough. This is Deck Building 101 on YouTube, not applied mathematics at Harvard. You're going to scare away some of our new players who want to play some Magic. Anyway, there is some math in Magic, but how deep you want to get into that's up to you. Now, if the professor would be so kind as to step away from the math for a little bit so you can look at some numbers, that'd be super helpful. But numbers are... whatever. Anyway, all this theory doesn't mean much if it stays theoretical. So let's go over some typical numbers in a Magic the Gathering deck. First up is your deck size. The minimum deck size is 60 cards, and it's almost always optimal to stay at exactly this number. You want the best odds to draw your best cards, and you're only allowed to play a maximum of 4 copies of each card, so playing 60 cards ensures you'll draw your best cards most often. Next up, and perhaps the most important part of your deck construction, is going to be your lands, as without them your deck will not function. The baseline number for lands is 24, and you're going to need a good reason to go above or below it. Decks can go as low as 20 or as high as 28 under certain circumstances, but 24 should be your baseline and where you start. Also important is the number of colored sources you have for each color you play. If you're playing a monocolored deck, this won't matter. But if you're playing a deck that's 2 or more colors, you need to make sure you've got enough of the right colors to cast your spells. If you're playing 12 forests and you're playing 12 mountains, that's 24 lands, but only 12 of each color. This means you may only draw forests when you need red mana, and vice versa. This is where the all-important dual lands come into play, as they can count for both sources. If you add 4 Rockfall Val and 4 Rugged Highlands in place of 4 mountains and 4 forests, now you're up to 16 sources of each color, which is about the minimum of where you'd want to be. Once your lands are set, it's on to your threats. Threats are usually creatures, but they can also be cards like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Wedding Announcement, or Kaito Shizuki, cards that aren't technically creatures, but either create creature tokens or present some sort of threat to your opponent. Aside from lands, threats should be the next most common type of card in your deck. The exact number will depend, but these are the cards that interact with the board and win you the game, so don't skimp on them. Lastly, we have your utility cards. These can be kill spells like Cut Down, counter spells like Make Disappear, discard spells like Pilfer, ramp spells like Relic of Legends, or other cards that either help facilitate your own game plan or help to disrupt your opponents. The number and type of these cards will be very dependent on your deck's overall game plan. These are of course just guidelines. One of the things that makes Magic a wonderful game is how often these rules can be broken. In some of Magic's older formats, there are decks that play 0 lands or play 40 lands. There are some decks that don't play any creatures at all, and some decks that are entirely creatures. Some decks are all 5 colors, and some decks are 0 colors, but we'll save all of that for a more advanced course. I agree, Prof. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here and just stick to the basics. You can consider, we'll say, bending those rules for your second deck, but make sure you have a good reason to do so. For now, let's take a quick look at one of the pre-constructed decks that comes with Magic Arena, which you've already played, to refresh ourselves on what we've learned so far. Alright, here we are in the Magic the Gathering Arena deck builder, looking at the Cold-Blooded Killers deck. This is the mono-black pre-constructed deck that comes with your Arena account. Now, we're going to look over this really fast and go over our 3 main tenets we learned from Professor Jim about deck building and see them in action before we build our own deck. So, this is a deck that wants to attack our opponent, make them lose life, and can be kind of aggressive. Also a deck that wants to kill your opponent's creatures. We have kill spells like Murder to that end. And if things don't go right, we can top off on some pretty heavy hitters like Demon of Loathing and Nightmare. So, kind of the idea there. Again, not a super sharp focus, but a focus nonetheless. Manacurve here, great. We can see here a bunch of 1-drops, a bunch of 2-drops, a bunch of 3-drops, and then dropping off here as the mana curves go higher. A couple 4-drops, a couple 5-drops, a couple 6-drops, a couple 7-drops. There are 6 and 7s in this deck, which are pretty expensive. So we can see here an extra land. This is 25 lands rather than 24, but that works out very well. And as far as our threats go, we have cheap threats and we have large threats. So of course, Malakar Callblade and our Savage Gorger will get bigger early on. They start off small, they are cheap. And then of course, we can go up the curve to our larger creatures as well. And our utility spells here, a lot of removal spells. Black is excellent at killing creatures. So we see things like Compound Fracture, which can kill small creatures. Murder, which can kill anything. Couple tricks here in Unlikely Aid and creature augmentation effects like Eternal Thirst, but for the most part, not that many spells. A lot of creatures, a lot of lands, a lot of heavy hitters. So that's this deck. Enough with the pre-con decks. Let's build our own deck and get some of our own cards and get things rocking and rolling. Now it's time for what you've all been waiting for. Ooh, new cards? Well, yes, but also time to build our very own deck. Now, of course, as the professor just alluded to, what's a Magic deck without cards? By now, you've got the cards already on your account, as well as the cards you've unlocked by playing through the color challenges. But let's hook you up with a few extra packs. You can enter any and all of these codes in the store to get some free packs to bolster your account and get things started. I'm going to do the same, then walk you through the deck building process as we build a deck from scratch using the cards we open, the starter cards already on our account, and the lessons we learned today. And then we're going to play a few games. So let's get right to it. All right, here we are in the MTG Arena Deck Builder, which is a very powerful tool as far as sorting your cards, searching for things. And I decided that I want to build a blue-red spell-based deck. We have 2 copies of Soulblade Jhin from our starter decks, as well as a Keldon Flame Sage we opened from our Dominaria United packs, and both care about playing lots of instants and sorceries. The first thing we're going to do here is sort by colors. We obviously want to look at all of our cards that are not that are blue and red, so we can not play any green cards in our blue-red deck, right? And I want to go through and we're going to look at all the instant sorceries I want to play. Why don't you just go over here and search and type in instant sorcery. Now you can see this pop up here in the advanced search terms. Very, very powerful tool. Right now our collection is fairly small because we have a new account, but once you start getting deeper and deeper into the game, there are a lot of cards on Magic Arena, and this can help you search through them for all sorts of terms. You know, your mana costs, power, toughness, colors, expansion, lots of stuff. Definitely look at this at your own leisure. But we're going to type in instant and sorcery. So we can see here, Festival Crasher, pretty cool card. It gets buffed when we play instant sorcery. We've got Tolarian Terror, which costs less for instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. Awesome new card from Dominaria United. G2 Amplifier is kind of cool as well. Kind of like a worse Festival Crasher. It could be a card that makes our deck. Let's take a look through and decide what kind of spells we want to play here. We'll go through here reasonably fast. Obviously, I want to keep this video a reasonable length, but consider it's pretty good here. I want cheap spells to trigger our effects. And if you're looking at what the plan of this deck is going to be, it's going to be play creatures that care about playing instant sorceries and play a lot of really good cheap instant sorceries. Obviously, red has good direct damage spells, which can kill things. Blue has card draw spells like Consider, has bounce spells like Unsummon. And we're going to be kind of bouncing their stuff and getting in for huge chunks of damage with our Crashers. And that's kind of the plan. So let's scroll through here looking for more spells to play. Shock, excellent. A direct damage spell. Reckless Impulse is a pretty cool card draw spell, allowing you to look at the top 2 cards of your library and play them. Kind of like a draw 2, which is pretty cool. Then we have Goblin Gathering here, which is a really cool card. This is a token making card. So this card will create tokens on the battlefield that act just like creatures. And this card will keep making them and make more the more you cast. This card's really cool because we're looking for threats in our deck, as we were saying in our breakdown. We want to have enough, make sure we have enough threats in our deck. But this is also a sorcery, which will trigger our Festival Crashers and stuff like that too. So you can see we're building around our theme. That's really kind of it, honestly. So now you may say, Jim, that's only 20 cards. You told me we had to have 36 cards. Well, the good news is that we have our wild cards. So now wild cards on Magic the Gathering Arena are special cards that can be turned into any card you want permanently. So we have 15 common, 11 uncommon, 4 rare, and 1 mythic. Those are just from opening the packs that we opened in our from our promo codes. So we can go through and add cards to our deck. But of course, all we can see here is the cards we already have, right? Well, hit this button right here, and we're going to choose the Not Collected button. This will show us every single card on Arena that we don't have, as well as have. So there's a lot of cards here, right? So we're going to narrow this down. We're going to type in instant and sorcery again. It's instant sorcery. And what do we got here? We have a pretty powerful rare here in Haughty Jhin. Can go along our Jhin theme, which makes things cost less and makes a huge powered creature. I know Lightning Strike is an excellent card. That is a common. We'll find that one a little bit. Good burn spell. We also have Electrostatic Infantry, a really awesome new card from Dominaria United that gets bigger whenever you play a spell. So very, very similar to Festival Crasher. So we're going to add 4 of those. And I think we're also going to add the full 4 copies of Festival Crasher. So you can see I'm adding the cards now. The little diamond right here is the cards that we own. The clear diamond is not collected, but in the deck. So now we're building our deck without cards we own. They're grayed out. We can go through here. You can also go on the deck itself and just go right here, click the card, and pump it up like that, which is great. And we have 4 Consider. I would say you probably want 4 Shock. We have, I would say the Amplifier probably isn't good enough. Get rid of that one. Add maybe an Impulse, and we can add another Tolarian Terror. And then let's go through and find some direct damage spells you might like. There's a really good one here too, actually, a new legend from a new set as well. Balmor Battle Mage Captain. So 1/3 legendary creature. And whenever you cast instant or sorcery spell, all of your creatures get +1/+0 and trample. It's almost like a better version of Soulblade Jhin. This one's really, really good. It's also only an uncommon, so we're going to add 2 of those. And we're already reaching our maximum here, so we're already at 35 cards. I know it can be very tempting to just keep adding cards. It's just fun to add really cool cards to the deck, It's fun to add more cards. But as Professor Jim said, it is very important to keep your deck at 60 cards. Let's add some Lightning Strikes here. Another card that's currently in the most recent set. And there it is. So we'll add a few of those. And now we're at 37 cards. So let's cut the Call in a Professional, which kind of is a worse version of Lightning Strike. It has some extra abilities, but not really necessary. That's it. This is fine. This is 36 cards. So you could obviously season the taste here. But this is a pretty good, example of a deck that is going to be, functional, has a theme. You can see our mana curve here looks pretty good, right? We got a lot of 1s, a ton of 2s, some 3s, few 5s, and of course, Tolarian Terror, it says 7 on the card, but we'll hopefully be casting it for 2 or 3 mana. So a nice, cheap, low curve deck, fairly aggressive. And now we got to add our lands. We can go up here. We can close this out. We can go to the land button, which is right here. And we're going to add some islands. Click the card a few times and add them. Go over and add some mountains. Pick the art that you like. There's tons of cool promo arts too. I personally love the old border lands. That's just me though. And we'll go in and we'll add these cool Innistrad mountains. And then we'll look over at the dual lands. Like we were saying, we really want to have multiple sources of mana from our lands. Well, every arena account comes with a full playset of all of these cards. These are the come into play tap duels that gain a life. They're not the best dual lands in the format. Obviously, the rare lands are very, very good. And I know it's not necessarily fun to want to craft the rare lands because you want to craft, awesome spells and cool creatures, but it really, really is important to be able to cast your spells. And once you craft the good lands, they go in every deck. If I ever build a blue-red deck ever again, that land's going in it. Whereas Soulblade Djinn might not go in every deck. So let's add all 4 of these saltwater cliffs. And let's look here, and let's craft a few of the rare lands. So we can look at the current lands in Standard are the Storm-Carved Coasts. I'm going to be crafting the most recent ones with 3 of those in there. And then we currently have 11 more lands for our deck. And then we can mix out on here on our basics. We can go 6 and 6, maybe 7, 8. Now, how am I going to know how many lands I want to get? How do I know what the proper ratios are going to be? Well, if you click this little graph right here, you get a whole bunch of information about your deck, which is super cool. We see our Manacurve here actually out in a graph, which is sweet. And they've even separated the creatures and non-creatures. So this is important to keep our threat density high, as we were saying earlier. But also for our deck, it's especially important because a lot of our spells trigger off non-creature spells. So we can see here our non-creature count. We have 14 instants and 6 sorceries, so 20 total spells in our deck to help make our creatures better. And then we have 13 creatures. The types are here. That'll matter for some decks and not for others. And of course, the lands are here as well, 24 lands. So we see here we have 23 red symbols and 15 blue symbols. So that's our mana, skew here. It's not always an even split. So 64% red, 42% blue. So we can go back and skew our lands a little bit towards red. And we'll do 10 mountains and we'll do 7 islands and our dual lands. So this is our deck. Obviously, your deck might not look like this because you're going to look at the cards that you open and see what pikes your interest. Make your mission statement, which of course, for us, it was playing a blue-red spells deck. Make sure your mana curve is good. We did that. Make sure your lands work, which is great. And when you're all done, craft. Now, obviously, be careful with your wild cards. Once they're gone, they are gone. You cannot change them back. But the wild cards are the most important part of building a deck on Arena. So we're going to finish our deck. And now, boom, there you go. So our wild cards are down. We're a little low in our stock, but that's okay. You always get more wild cards for opening packs and for playing events. And here we go. Here's our deck. Sometimes building your deck is so much fun, you forget you actually get to play a game with it too. And for that, I'm going to introduce you to your new best friend, Sparky. Of course, you can play against people from all over the world on MTG Arena, but Sparky is the in-game bot you can play practice games with as well as test your decks out. Sparky has no timer, so you have plenty of time to figure things out, and doesn't usually gloat when it wins. So let's fire up our new blue-red deck against old Sparky and see how we do. Let's get into a game by hitting the play button on the bottom right of your Arena screen here and bringing up the play section. So we have multiple options here. This option here is the ranked queue, where you can go in and play against the players competing on the ladder, try and rank up to the highest rank, which of course is Mythic, and play against the best players in the world. We also have the play queue here, which is just the more casual queue where you can just play a game. And we have the brawl queue over here. We'll get to that later. Not important for now. So our formats are here: Standard, Alchemy, Historic, or Explorer. Also choose best of 1 or best of 3. We're just going to play a bot match. So bot match, of course, is going to be 1 game against good old Sparky. We're going to select our deck, which is my first deck. And then we're all ready to go. Hit play and fire the game up. And there's Sparky, our buddy. We're going to look at our opening hand, and we see a pretty good hand here. We've got 2 mountains, of course. No blue mana just yet, but a bunch of good creatures to cast, as well as a spell. And our opponent's going first, so we'll be drawing an extra card as well. So we're going to keep this 7. See what Sparky has in store for us. Swamp Typhoid Rats, a 1/1 Death Touch creature. And look at that. We drew the island, no problem. So we're going to play a mountain, and we're going to say go. We have the ability to shock, but it is an instant. Typically with instants, you want to wait until the last possible moment to use it. And we're going to hold off on that just for now. So they play a Kervokian Scoundrel, a 2/1 creature. It's a human rogue. And they're going to attack with their rat. Now, because our Crasher has 3 toughness, and because our infantry will probably have 3 toughness, not too scared of a Scoundrel, but I am scared of the rats killing one of my creatures. So I'm just going to cast this shock right now. Get the rats out of here. It's less about taking damage and more about wanting to kill the rat so it can't block my stuff. So, play an island. And now you decide if you want to play the Battle Mage Captain, the Infantry, or the Festival Crasher. Infantry is probably the best of the three at this early stage in the game. With no other creatures in play, Battlemore is only a temporary boost, whereas the Infantry will get bigger as the game goes on. So, play the Infantry and say go. Currently a 1/2 creature. Whenever I cast an instant or sorcery, it will get bigger, which is great. They play a big Croak and Froggy here in Witch's Familiar. It's a 2/3 vanilla creature. And we are not going to block the Scoundrel. We want our thing to get bigger. And we're going to draw an Unsummon. So, pretty cool draw. We see now we have 2 lands in play. So our Storm-Carved Coast is going to come into play untapped for the rest of the game, which is awesome. Making 2 different colors of mana. So you can play the Coast here. And now you have a few options. We're already at a point in the game we can play 2 spells at once. So we can already play Crasher or Battle Mage Captain and Unsummon. I think I want to get the Crasher down right now because Crasher attacks are more damage overall, and Battle Mage can affect the things that are already in play. And the question is, do I want to unsummon their Witch's Familiar and get it for some damage or not? And I think the answer is yes. We're going to fire it up here. So we're going to bounce the Familiar. This will trigger both of our infantry and our Crasher. Of course, the Crasher is only till end of turn, but the Infantry is permanent. It is now a 2/3, and it has Trample, which is great, because one of the problems is if you have a huge creature, they just block it. So you see the Familiar come back down, so they kind of wasted their whole turn there. And then they have a Scoundrel and a Familiar on defense to our Crasher and our Infantry. We draw a Consider, which is great, because we want to keep the spells rolling here. And now I think it's time to deploy our Balmor Battle Mage Captain. So this also gives our creatures Trample, which is excellent with our Festival Crashers. So we're going to play a land. And then we're going to play the Balmor Battle Mage Captain. And then we're going to cast Consider. We could play this as an instant in our combat step. Let's see if we can draw a spell we're going to want to cast here. Might change our plays. So, a bunch of triggers. So, once again, that was pretty fast there. As an Unsummon on top of our deck. We're going to keep that, I think. So, we saw the trigger for the Infantry and the Crasher and the Balmor. We now have a 4/4 Trample and a 4/3 Trample. And we're going to attack with both. So, our opponent could choose to double block one of our creatures. If they do, I guess okay. So, we're going to kill both their creatures for our creature, which is great. Deal them a nice chunk of damage. We're doing a great job here of keeping the board nice and clear. While also having things to do behind. So they play land number 5 and they say go. We draw a Shock. So now we've got some spells here, but they kind of want our opponent to have stuff in play. So we're just going to slow down here a little bit. Opponent's got 3 cards in hand. Put a bunch of mana up. Could have a kill spell or something like that. Sparky doesn't seem to have too much going on here. We're going to play a Festival Crasher and just say go. Setting up for an absolutely monstrous turn next turn. We can cast a bunch of spells, grow our Crashers, grow our Balmor, and just go nuts. So here's a Kervokian Scoundrel. I'm saying that wrong. Sorry, folks. And we're going to untap and draw a Storm-Carved Coast. So I think it's time to go in for the kill. So we're going to play our Coast. We're going to unsummon the Scoundrel, triggering all of our effects. So we see +2/+2, +2/+2, and then the Global Pump on the Battle Mage Captain. And then we're just going to go fire a Shock right off at their face. I'm going to cast Shock targeting Sparky. I'm sure Sparky loves a good Shock. Triggers again. Pump the squad. Now I have a 6/3, a 6/3, 3/3, now a 7/3, 7/3, 3/3, and attack for a huge amount. Boom, and there it is. So, deck worked like a charm. Of course, Sparky is obviously playing starter decks, so they're a little, going to be a little more difficult against a real human opponent. But deck did what it's supposed to do. We drew our threats, we drew our spells, we had some pretty good land draws there, and that worked out really, really well. First deck, first game, I'm happy, you should be too. Now, one thing to be aware of is you're going to play against all types of players on MTG Arena. Some may be new like you, but some may have been playing for years and have all different types of cards and many powerful decks. The most important thing is to learn and have fun, and always be looking for ways to improve your deck and your play. Professor Jim, you have any parting words? You have taken a very big step today into a vast and wonderful world. Magic is a classic game because it is easy to learn but hard to master. So I wish you well on your journey. Good luck. Thanks for your help, Professor Jim. Well, that about wraps it up. Good luck out there. Maybe one day I'll see you for a game of Mythic.